Code 7. The warrior becomes one with all things. The warrior becomes one with all things. They understand that it is the darkness that separates. The light brings all things together. The most significant prayer in Hebrew liturgy is a Shema. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4, the prayer is short and simple. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God. The Lord is one. It is both simple and profound. The Lord is one. Why would that be the central prayer for the people of Israel? They lived in a time where there was so much fragmentation that they had an endless number of gods that people understood were responsible for all the endless issues of life. I'm convinced the reason we've created so many gods is that we have created so many versions of ourselves. We are broken and fragmented and shattered to pieces, and we don't know who we are. And we think that we don't know who we are, and that is disconnected with our not knowing who God is. But if you actually reverse the process and understand that when you know who God is, you begin to know who you are. You begin to realize that a part of the reason we have a loss of identity is that the universe is fragmented. There's a disconnection. That God created everything to be interconnected. Everything was created to live and exist in this oneness. God is one, and everything that is created was created to be interconnected with the wholeness, the oneness of God. It's an extraordinary concept that God is one but expresses himself in three, that God is Father and Son and Spirit, but never three, always one. God is one in his completeness, but he's unique and diverse and creative in how he expresses himself. When God created the universe, everything was interconnected. And when God created us, we were created in this interconnectedness. One of the best evidences that we were created for God and that there's been a severing of our relationship with God is the severing that we see everywhere, all around us. There's a disconnection between each other, between us and others. We feel the disconnection and we long for the connection. The very word intimacy exposes the fact that there is a separation, a distance, a chasm between us. What if the best evidence of our disconnection from God is the disconnection all around us? There's such a clear disconnection between us as human beings, a separation between us. We have an endless number of words that describe it. Bitterness, rejection, isolation, separation, brokenness, anger, violence, envy, jealousy, conflict, battle, war. This is the language of the separation between us. And the lines that we draw that separate us, whether it's race or color or gender or ideology or beliefs or religion or borders. How is it possible that humans are better at identifying what separates us than what makes us more like each other, what pulls us together? And in the most ironic of ways, some of the greatest hostilities and violences in the world are between people that others could not tell the difference between. Belfast was a battle zone between the Irish and the Northern Irish, between the McMahons and the McManuses. How could anybody ever distinguish between the Protestants and the Catholics? But they knew where the lines were drawn. The Hutu and the Tutsis were two tribal peoples that were more similar than they were different, but they slaughtered each other and massacred each other. How is it possible that Spain and Portugal could ever be enemies, that Scotland and England could ever be at war? Why is it that so oftentimes when, from our most objective observation, we are so similar, we draw the lines of separation? It might be this disconnection that's the best evidence of our disconnection from God. But not only are we disconnected with each other, Not only have we lost that intimate relationship, it tells us of the first man and the first woman of Adam and Eve, that God created them so that they would become one, that they would become one flesh, they would be of one heart, of one mind, that they would walk together in this completion, that they would be in this oneness together. And now even in marriages, we have a language of divorce because we don't even know how to come together as two people. And if we cannot figure out how to walk together as two, how will we ever learn how to walk together as 7 billion or 10 billion? And then we see the disconnection between us and creation. We're the only species that is within the species and outside the species. We're a part of nature, yet somehow separate from nature. There is no other species talking about global warming. There is no other species talking about climate control. There is no other species talking about their negative impact and relationship to creation. How is it possible that if we're just an advanced version of every other species, if we're no different than antelopes, no different than polar bears, no different than penguins, no different than orangutans, how is it possible that we could not be a part of nature, but make choices that would actually destroy nature and erode the health of this planet? Somehow we humans seem disconnected even to creation itself. Now, I've always imagined what the relationship of humanity must have been like before the fall. If the scriptures are to be taken seriously, and I think they should be, it tells us that God said that we are to have dominion over the earth, dominions over the birds in the air and over the fish of the sea and over the beasts that walk on the ground. And frankly, in our present state of being, we're only structured to have dominion over the beasts that walk on the ground. We seem to be separated from the universe that lives in the oceans and the universe that lives in the atmosphere. And I just have to imagine to myself that maybe, just maybe, before the fall, humans were not bound to the earth, that humans were as free to fly as eagles and sparrows and could live inside of the ocean like porpoises or sharks, that humans actually were more interconnected to creation. I know this idea sounds outlandish, but is it possible that our disconnection is more severe than we even know? Well, at the very least, what I do know is this: we seem incapable of knowing how to get along, how to walk together. The first act of murder on this planet was when Cain killed his brother Abel. It is not incidental that Cain was angry with God and then killed his brother. See, when you're angry with God, how do you retaliate against God? The only way you can retaliate against God is to harm something he loves. Cain knew he could not hurt God by swinging at God, but he could hurt God by shedding his brother's blood. The separation between humanity is the most tragic and concrete evidence of our separation with God. This is why connectedness is a concept that we need to understand and a value we need to move toward. The warrior understands that they were designed, that they were created to be connected to all things. The way of the warrior is the end of separation. The warrior lives for the connectedness of all things. The warrior lives to be one with God, to be one with humanity, and to be one with creation. Jesus prayed, my prayer for you is that you would be one, that you would love one another. And I don't think it's incidental that Jesus' prayer is that we would love each other the way that he loves us, and the way he loves his Father, the way his Father loves him. That he also prays that we would be one, even as he and the Father are one. This is the truth that the warrior understands, that only love reconnects, that only love will make us one again. When we love God, we learn once again to love others. And when we love others, we learn once again to love creation. The warrior is moved by love and becomes one with all things. Hope connects us to the future. Faith makes us human again. And love makes us one with all things. The way of the warrior is the end of separation. The warrior is one with all things.